I'd like to share with you one of the whispers from eternity from Paramahansa Yogananda. I take this sacred vow, never will I lower my love's gaze below the eyebrow horizon of my constant thoughts of thee. Never will I turn my uplifted inner sight away from thee. Never will I let my mind dwell on anything that reminds me not of thee. I will disdain the nightmare of ignorant behavior. I will court all dreams of noble achievement, those of love, kindness, and understanding, for they are thy dreams. Though I dream many dreams, wakefully I will ever think of thee. In the sacred fire of constant remembrance, kept ever alight on my soul's altar, I will ever behold thy presence with the watchful eyes of devotional love. Thy grace has shown me that the dualities of health and sickness, life and death, joy and sorrow, are but passing fantasies. I am finished with those eternally self-canceling delusions. I am persuaded at last that there is but one abiding reality, thy eternal, ever-conscious, ever-new, ever-thrilling, infinite bliss. Often this world has a good way of appearing to us as a puzzle. And certainly in these times, it appears even more so that way. But it's always been that way. But for some people, maybe most people in the world at large, their own life is a puzzle as well. And there really feels to be no way of solving that puzzle for many people. And there's always the search for something outside of themselves, something that would be that magical thing that will bring all the pieces of the puzzle together. But that isn't how it works. And if we view it, approach life that way, it will always remain, where are those pieces that are missing? I've looked on the floor, I've looked in the closet, I've looked under my bed, but they're not there. Because they're not there. They're not outside of ourselves. And so the divine, God has given us many gifts. And as it says in the Festival of Light, that these gifts are given us to expand and multiply them, to be in tune with them. And one of the gifts is our mind and the capacity to have thinking. It's not as if it's the obstacle to us in our lives, unless, as the Pharisees approached and understood the working of the mind and their intellect, that it became more contractive, more protective, very narrow in its focus. But it's not the mind or even the intellect that's flawed. It's the relationship that we give to it in our maybe misunderstanding of it. I was reading a chapter from one of the books that are transcripts of Master's talks, of Yogananda's talks. And in it, he talks about understanding being a primary way that we will find fulfillment in life. Without understanding, we will drift, we will go on detours, we'll get caught by this and that. Our fancies become more of the guiding force rather than the real focus of what and how we are in our lives and where we're going. Very interesting, because one thing that you can understand coming from science, for instance, what science has brought to clarity, is that the way you have your thoughts, if you're having thoughts that are always critical, that they're, in a sense, negative, that what builds up is a destructive behavior in the brain itself, not only in this ethereal thing we call thoughts, but in the brain itself. And when that happens, you tend to have the emphasis of going again and again to that way of approaching life. You set in motion in the the brain wavelengths, that pattern. And as you emphasize it and then reinforce it time and time again, you become like the Pharisees. You're always reacting. You're always contractive. You're always not trusting others. And that's what builds. Your brain is set up to go in that direction if you feed it that negative focus, or it'll go in the other direction if you feed it positive, expansive thoughts. And indeed, the negativity that we feed our brains is very corrosive. Indeed, some of the research shows that that damages the physical brain. It not only traps you in these tendencies, it actually is a detriment to the physical brain. And of course, that adds to the conundrum, the challenge, because we have less capacity to really go in the direction that we know is to be true. But we get caught. It's like being in a rut. You think you can get out of it, but you keep going in that rut. And so the mind, when it's held hostage, in a sense, by this negative pattern, really is the challenge where that thinking won't bring us understanding. But we can change that. And the affirmation for today, the topic and affirmation for this week, I should say, from Affirmation for Self-Healing on Devotion, is a very, very significant key. Very, very important. Because when the mind falters, if we can feel in the depth of our being, beyond our thoughts, our heart, and the heart's devotion, then we always have the possibility of really making changes happen. You know, the reading that Parvi did about the affirmation on devotion hints at something, but that's very important for us to tune into. And it's a statement that Swami Sri Yukteswar gives us in his book, Holy Science. And I should mention that Crystal Clarity Publishers, in the near future, will be publishing our own version of the Holy Science of Swami Sri Yukteswar. So a good step. But towards the end of the book, Swami Sri Yukteswar, after going through a very thorough explanation that really challenges our intuitive wisdom to catch what he's saying, says this very simple statement that we've heard many times, you've read it many times, and it's simply what Swami Kriyananda hinted at in his reading today in the affirmation, that one cannot take even a single step on the path without the unfoldment of the heart's natural love. When we wrap our aura around that, we have a tremendously practical tool to really look at and to gain really the possibility of being in God, having that deep understanding that's beyond just the intellect. It's the mind with its gift of being part of how we operate, combined with that heart's deep feeling of devotion that allows us to break through a lot of crusty old habits and just dead weight that we carry around with us in the subconscious, but throughout our lives. And so we have this possibility. And, you know, Yogananda gave this wonderful statement. He said that Kriya Yoga plus devotion works like mathematics. It cannot fail. But we can actually also realize that it's not only just Kriya Yoga, which is the highest technique of meditation that we have, but it really applies to meditation. So meditation plus devotion works like mathematics. It cannot fail. And that's real important that we see that part of it as well. Because remember, the heart's energy can go in one of two directions. And if the heart is caught by desires, by attachments, it's being caught by our ego. And it's a powerful force. And when we're caught with those desires and attachments, we get just in that flow of emotions. And it's the emotions that strengthen our likes and dislikes. They strengthen the duality that is the other end of the spectrum from our oneness in God. But it has great magnetism as we feed it in that way. You know what it's like to be really into your emotions. They can become supercharged, and they can become immensely powerful in making you really go off track. Just think of the simple thing that happens sometimes in a conversation where you know you're absolutely right. But the other person knows absolutely that they're right, but it's not the same right. And we've all had that happen. And what starts to creep in is, I'm going to prove that I'm right. It's not just good enough that I am right. I'm going to make sure that I prove this, and the other person finally wakes up and sees that. Well, that's charged by emotions, because under circumstances where we're who we are, in the center of who we are, those differences are something we can respect more. It's not that we respect the difference so much as we respect the other person has that difference. That's a subtle difference there. So we're always living in the light of being supportive of someone, whether their behavior, whatever, isn't appropriate. We don't have to accept that, but we really should accept that person beyond their behavior, beyond what's going on. Because they're a soul like us, they're a child of God. But the emotions, they cloud that. They not only put a veil in front of us, they put a thick concrete wall of being compassionate, of being kind. But it's interesting with the brain that if we act, and sometimes we have to kind of find the baseline here of this, but if we act with kindness and compassion to others, it will grow in us. And it will be the way that we correspondingly relate to people. That the immediate response is always a kindness, a compassion, a care. Again, not so much always what people are doing, but for themselves, that we nurture that blessing for them. And as Master said, Yogananda said, the instrument is blessed by that which flows through it. We then have that magnetism of that blessing for ourselves. So that feeds that momentum of even greater magnetism around who we really are, with these real primary qualities of who we are, because they're coming from our soul. And they're coming from our soul, from the divine. That spirit, which is infinite and omnipresent, is flowing into us, allowing that blessing to become the reality of who we are, because we are that soul as that expression of that infinite spirit. So again, it's not just a philosophy or a nice thing to think about. How do we apply this so that we are always moving in the right direction? And again, meditation creates even more of that magnetic presence. Because in meditation, we start to clarify our thinking. We clarify the way that the brain and the mind works. And again, it starts to embrace and envelop these more positive qualities. Not because to add them, but to embrace that they're already there within our own selves. That's a very powerful way of living our lives. And so we need to work on all levels. I know that we all probably have our way of approaching healing prayers and thinking of others. It's important to be very magnetic in that. Because again, part of me mentioned this thing during explaining purification and the fire ceremony, that when you have things that are repeated a lot in our lives, every day, twice a day, 3 or 4 times a day. We meditate, we do affirmations, we chant, we do all these things. We have a mindset. We need to just pause at times and just be in the experience rather than looking from the outside, trying to have the experience. To be in the experience, shifting from trying to have the experience. Now, the trick is, that isn't always seemingly accessible. At that point, we need to emphasize trying to have the experience. But don't stay in that. Become more centered where you're feeling that's who I am in that experience. That I'm not so much having the experience. I am. And little by little, you can feel that. At the beginning, maybe you're affirming that. You're hoping for it. But it doesn't take long to feel a little bit of that reality that this is my experience. Whether we have the grand experience, we see the spiritual eye, or we hear the inner sounds. Those are extra bonuses. But the real gift is just that experience of being centered in God. When we are in that, we start to really feel the magnetism of possibility. That our minds are really part of that, our thinking process. The capacity to be clear in our thinking is part of that centeredness. It is a clarity that we, in a sense, open up to. Not so much we're adding it. It can appear that we're adding it, but we're opening up to it. And when we bring that devotion, again, that openness of the heart in expanding, of embracing all others. Again, compassion is a deeper level than either empathy or sympathy. Sympathy is very important because we can appreciate the pain of others. But there's this part that sympathy is removed from that other person that's suffering. Empathy is when we have the concern for the other person. And I read last year an article that said there's a movement about basically denigrating empathy because it's a weak tool to commanding what needs to happen for us in our lives. From our understanding, it is a very powerful, but most importantly, a significant tool for us to grow and to touch others in that growth. So empathy is when we're able to, as I said, appreciate more than just feel sorry for someone or feel bad for someone suffering. We feel we've probably walked in their shoes in our own experience. And so it's a real connection of the heart. And compassion takes it further. The compassion of the heart is when we're willing to act as an instrument of blessing to others. So you can see the power of why Yogananda emphasized healing prayers so much. Because it is that enlivened experience of compassion put into action that goes beyond our cares and concerns into really filling others and filling this world with a tremendous blessing. Again, very practical for us to approach life with. That we can take these steps. They become more and more the natural setting of the heart's love for people around us. And that's the understanding. That's the blessing that our souls are always opening up to and waiting for the other parts of us to let go of the ego, to let go of our desires and attachments, and be powerfully free in that experience. That already we are one with the divine. Blessings.
Praise ye the Lord, all creatures, He who did make the mountains, Him who fills our hearts with song. Praise Him who lifts their notes on high, there where earthly hopes belong. Praise ye the Lord, all creatures, He who did make the seasons, He who did make the hush of night, He who made the sun. Praise Him who gave us laughter, praise Him who taught our hearts to love. Praise Him and thank Him, everyone. Seek Him in His light above. Praise Him who gave us laughter. Praise Him who taught our hearts to love. Praise Him and thank Him, everyone. Seek Him in His light above.
Home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing betrayal far, far away. Home is the knowledge heaven is near. Home's the end of the fray. Home is my heart's land, home's where I am. Nothing can dim the light of my soul. Home is forever, home is today. Home's a heart that is whole. Often I dream that life is a play, laughter forever and skies never gray. But when I'm silent, freed from all care, I discover my home's everywhere. Home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing betrayal far, far away. Home is the knowledge heaven is near. Home's the end of the fray.
Thank you to all of our donors for making it possible to share these videos and keep this channel ad-free. If you feel inspired to donate, visit ananda.org/give.